Home prices are making a comeback. Get ready. We're going to dive in that today. Welcome to SRT Live. I am your host, Sean, with the Sean Richard Mortgage team here at Guaranteed Rate. I'm excited to bring you some incredible information today. Lots of goings on in the mortgage, real estate, and economic markets, and we're going to dive into it all today. So let's get started, as we always do, with the week in review. Last week, we had some pretty important information come out in the form of existing home sales. Now, this is reported as an annual pace. And so that came in at 4.44 million annual pace last week versus an expected 4.5 million annual pace. So a little bit below expectations. This is also below the previous month's reading of 4.55. What's important about this, not only were we down 2.4% month over month, but more importantly for us here in the South region, Texas and surrounding states, we were only down 1%. So we've got to look at this as a local component. Although nationally, we're seeing that slow down a little bit. Here in the southern region, and more specifically here in Texas and hyper locally here in DFW, we're seeing the pace slow at a slower pace than we're seeing on a national scale. We're outpacing the nation, which is typical of our market. Now, we also got initial and continuing jobless claims. This is unemployment claims, initial being those individuals filing unemployment for the first time, and continuing those individuals renewing their unemployment benefits. Now, we've ticked up recently in the most recent weeks, and we're now seeing initial unemployment claims come in the mid 200,000. And last week was no exception. We came in at 245,000 new unemployment claims week over week. And this was versus an expectation of 240,000. So up above expectations and above the previous week's reading of 240,000 as well. So seemingly on the rise in new employment claims. But what really shook the markets a little bit was the continuing claims. Expectation was about 1.82 million in renewing claims. We came in at 1.865 million. So a pretty big increase. We also saw an increase over the previous week's reading of 1.80. So this was up pretty significantly. We're up about 60,000 claims that were renewed. And this is important. I've talked about this before. This is important for our markets because one of the components that the Fed is looking at is the labor market and how tight the labor market is. And we talked about I think last week we talked about the flow of what businesses go through when talking about the labor market. Businesses, obviously they hire, and then when business starts to slow down, they don't just immediately start firing people. The first thing that they do is they usually put a freeze on hiring. They slow down their hiring. If that's not sufficient, then they go to the next phase, which is going to be a reduction in hours, especially if they have if that particular company is heavy on hourly workers. They're going to start cutting hours. Instead of working people 36 hours a week, maybe it's 32 hours a week or 28 hours a week. And we see those weekly hours decline. If that is still not sufficient, then we see companies move towards letting employees go. And so that's the last phase of the process. And so those initial claims are going to be the last thing to pick up. Continuing claims, we're going to see an impact in that sooner because that's going to be more reflective of companies putting hiring freezes on. More people are having to stay unemployed and renew those claims versus finding jobs. So really important information to watch on a week over week basis. All right. So big week already this week. Today, Tuesday, we got the FHFA Home Price Index. This measures home price appreciation on single family residences. This was a big deal. So market analysts, they expected a decrease of 0.1%. We got a 0.5% increase. And what's important about that is this marks the breaking of a 7-month streak of home price appreciation declining. Now, it doesn't mean that home prices have been in the negative on a month-over-month basis. It just means that the pace at which their homes are appreciating has declined over the last 7 months, and we are now seeing a reversal of that. Now, 1 week does not make a trend, so we want, or 1 month does not make a trend, so we want to watch this over the next couple of months of reports. But this is an important component of what we expect to see going into the spring and summer buying season in our housing market. Now, the previous month's reading was a 10% increase month over month. So we are now getting to a point where we're seeing home prices. They did this for quite some time. They started to do one of these, and now they're starting to come back up. And so if you're a real estate agent, this is critical information to talk to your clients about. We've had this great 90 to 120-day window where we've seen home prices stabilize. Although interest rates have remained relatively high, they have declined from their peaks from last July, August. We've had a phenomenal window for home buyers, but it does appear that that window is starting to close as we head into the spring and summer buying season. So have that conversation, have the information and data back it up. If you are a home buyer, know that that window is closing. And although the rate environment is a little bit higher, the ability to refinance later on is going to be able to offset that. Whereas if we get into multiple offer environment like we had last summer, and you're having to pay more for the home, there's not the ability to go back and renegotiate that sales price. So given the opportunity between high price and low rate, which we had last summer, versus high rate and low price, I'm going to take the high rate and low price every time, because only one of those things can be addressed later on. So we also got the Case-Shiller Home Price Index. Now this measures home price appreciation across the board, which does include cash sales, and cash buyers tend to be able to put a little bit more pressure on that price, get slightly better deal than maybe a financed buyer. So this is a little bit skewed in that regards. But this is this we saw a 0.4% tick up month over month versus 1/10 expectation, and we saw a 2.6% year over year change. This is down from 4% the month before. So the speed at which we're appreciating has been slowing, has been decelerating, but it looks like we're about to turn the corner on that in the coming months. All right, so we also got new home sales today. This came in at an annualized pace of 683,000 versus expectations of 634,000. So almost a 10% beat on the new home sales. Same versus previous reading of 623,000. So 9.6% increase over last month's reading. And so the pace of new home sales is increasing. Now this is signed contracts on new construction. And so this is an important component of our housing industry. It makes up about 10% of our monthly sales, and then existing home sales makes up the other 90%. But builders are a big part of where new inventory is going to come from. I believe last week you heard me talk about the amount of inventory that we had for February. It was 980,000 nationally, and we'll get those numbers with existing home sales later on this month. And so the important component there is the home buyer mix on a monthly basis. Back in February, about 27-28% of home buyers were first-time home buyers, and about 18-19% of home buyers were investors. And so just shy of 50% of home buyers for the month were not adding any inventory. First-time home buyers have nothing to sell. Investors are typically not selling to buy. Then when you factor in all of the home buyers that have elected to keep their home and rent it out and buy a new primary residence, they're not adding inventory to the market as well. So we've got very few outlets that new inventory is coming to the market. Builders are a big component of that. They're an important aspect of putting more inventory out in the market. With that being said, just one more reason why inventory is likely to stay relatively low throughout the rest of the year and possibly going forward. We're going to keep an eye on that on a month-to-month basis. All right. We also got consumer confidence. Now, this downgraded. The market was expecting around a 104.2 on this index, came in at 101.3. The simple information is the lower this is, the more pessimism that we have in the marketplace. This particular survey surveys 5,000 households on a monthly basis and asks questions about the current business conditions, the anticipation of where the conditions are going to be in over the next 6 months, current employment conditions, what that's going to look like over the next 6 months, as well as what the expectation of household income is going to look like over the next 6 months. And so this is well below expectations, below the previous reading. And so it appears that households are having a little bit of pessimism on where we're headed as an economy. Now, this information can be skewed. Only 5,000 households are surveyed on a monthly basis. So you could very much have luck of the draw, 5,000 households, with the majority of them being a little bit more on the pessimistic side. And other months, you could have that small sample size being a little bit more optimistic. But it's important to take a look at this to see what the pulse of of society is on where we're headed economically, because the confidence that the average consumer has about where the economy is heading does impact what they do with their finances, what they spend on, how much they spend, what they spend it on, and that includes making a home purchase. If you, as a home owner or a potential home buyer, feel that the economy is not moving in a positive direction, you're likely to maybe scale back on the potential for a home purchase. And so this consumer confidence is really important to kind of gauge what the society is thinking about where we're headed. All right, just another note real quick on that consumer confidence number. That's actually a 9-month low. So we're not at a hyper optimistic point on this particular survey. So we want to see if this makes a trend and we see another low number next month, or if we rebound and see something closer to that 104 level that was expected. All right, so looking ahead this week, relatively light week, but we do have some big numbers. Starting on Thursday, we get the first reading of Q1 GDP. We get 3 readings. We'll get April, May, and June. We'll be reading 1, 2, and 3 for Q1 GDP. So this is our first glance at estimated GDP for Q1. We also get pending home sales. That's going to be an important number to watch for a housing market. And then, as always, on Thursdays, we get our jobless claims or unemployment claims. And then on Friday, we get the big PCE report. This is personal consumption expenditure. This is an inflation report, and this is the Fed's favorite measure of inflation. So we're going to watch that closely. And then we also get the University of Michigan Consumer Sentiment, another consumer survey to see how the economy is doing in the eyes of the consumers. All right, so let's jump into what we are watching going forward. Now, we've got a Fed meeting coming up in a couple weeks on May 3rd, actually about a week and a half. May 3rd, we've got the next Fed meeting. And this is going to be an important one with everything that's transpired. What are we going to see out of the Fed? Are we going to see a rate hike? Are we going to see a pause? Or are we going to start to see a downshift and see a rate reduction? I don't think we're going to see that rate reduction. I do think that we're likely to see a pause with no change to the Fed funds rate. But that PCE report coming out this Friday very well could make or break what the Fed decides to do on May 3rd. So we're going to watch that. And then we're also watching the housing market heading into the spring and summer buying season. As you heard me say, inventory is going to remain low. Home prices starting to turn the corner and starting to rise again. And we're seeing reports of anecdotal reports of multiple offer scenarios. I know I've had some buyers in multiple offers recently. Other real estate agents are seeing multiple offers. We're heading in that direction again. And then as we see inflation decline in the coming months, we will see mortgage rates decline, and that's going to stoke more demand, which is going to only exacerbate the competition in the market. So important to understand that the window of time before we get hyper competitive seems to be closing. The good news is when you're working with the right team, you can develop the right strategy to win in any market. So make sure if you have any questions, or if you want to make sure that you've got the right strategy, whether you're a real estate agent looking for the right mortgage team, or whether you're a home buyer looking for the right mortgage and real estate team to put you in the best position. Reach out. You've got my contact information right here. Feel free to give me a call, leave comments below, and we'll make sure that you're in the best possible position to navigate any market. All right, gang. Well, that's all I've had for you today. I want to say thank you so much for joining me on this episode of SRT Live. If you are checking us out on our private Facebook group and the Powerhouse group, thank you so much for being an incredible part of our community. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that way you can get up-to-the-date economic, housing, and real estate information at the palm of your hands. Again, I'm Sean with the Sean Richard Mortgage team here at Guaranteed Rate. Thanks so much for joining me and have an incredible rest of your week. Take care.